Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says I know more about history than most people do.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Newsies to teach our kids history.
That was actually a good one. I liked Newsies. I like the stage one better than
It's-
the
movie.
Batman. Yeah, Christian Bale movie.
Yeah, I do too.
Though granted, I don't think I ever paid much attention to the Christian Bale movie. I remember it was really popular amongst the kids in high school. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was actually a flop. Did you know that? It became
That might explain why. I
It
didn't
became
know
a
about
cult
it.
classic later.
All right. Anyway, before we get into our episode, which is not about news, is it? Oh, is it about
Keep
Newsies?
going.
Is it about Newsies?
Keep going. You'll
Is it-
find out,
You're
won't
not
you?
denying it. So,
You will find out sooner if you go.
before we get let's take a minute to talk about something from a past episode. It's important to keep in mind that Shirley doesn't warn me about our topic beforehand. She's not even warning me now. Do you people hear what I have to deal with?
Yep.
Ugh.
It's fun for me to see what he knows right off the top of his head, and that sometimes means that we miss things. If you would like to hear a more comprehensive and well-prepared episode on any topic, just let us know. So, honey, the one thing that I have that was brought up by a listener, our friend Rebecca, is remember that Africanus guy that you've mentioned before?
Scipio Africanus?
Yes. How confident are you that his name is pronounced Scipio?
Not 100%, but I don't know that I've ever heard it pronounced any other way.
Okay. See, this is interesting. So, talking with Rebecca based on her knowledge and then Googling it and stuff, apparently some people say it's Scipio, and some people insist it's Scipio.
Yeah. I'd be disinclined on that one because the Scipio one would sound more Germanic than Latinish. Not that I'm a linguist.
See, and I don't know, but it feels like Neanderthal versus Neanderthal. Like, first of all, does it matter? And second of all, how would Scipio have pronounced his own name? Probably nothing like that because he would have had a different accent or whatever.
Possibly. So two things that I want to say about that. First off, we can never be too sure that we're pronouncing some people's names. Off the top of my head, I remember that I had one professor who would get mad at us anytime that we ever talked about Attila the Hun because he would always say, his name is Adela, not Attila, Adela.
Right.
And one of my absolute favorites has always been this one.
What?
Who, if you were to give me a guess, who would you say is the most famous Roman?
Julius Caesar.
Kaiser.
Oh, right,
His
right.
name is pronounced Kaiser, supposedly, according to some people.
Right.
The proper pronunciation of his name is Kaiser. But everybody
Right.
knows it's Caesar.
But if you were to go back in time, how would Julius have said it?
I actually, in this particular case, I am willing to believe that Kaiser is
Okay.
actually the correct pronunciation.
Okay. So we're all wrong.
So that was point number one.
Okay.
Point number two, to your does it matter? Does it? I would say, all right. Think about today. When some people get their name mispronounced, we react different ways. Some people
Yeah.
react in I don't care that you got my name wrong. Some people react in I'm going to politely tell you, oh, it's actually pronounced this
Yeah.
way. Some people freak out and say, how dare you mispronounce my name, you heathen. People
Right.
react differently.
And then there's
It's
people.
it's up to the person,
Yeah.
not up to it's up to the person whose name it is,
Yeah.
not up to the person who said the name to determine whether or not
Right.
it's acceptable.
And those people that we talk about in history are dead. They can't tell us how
Yeah,
they want us
not,
to
it's
say
not
it.
exactly like they have lawyers that are defending them. Well, even the lawyers who would be defending them who would say, no, their name is this way.
They
We
don't
can't
all
all agree.
Yeah. Well, and plus, then there's people who if your name is Jan, and then you come to America and you start calling yourself John, because it's the same name. But it's not the same name. We know a guy who did that. His name was Jan. Was he from Romania?
Yes.
And he came to America.
He had a lot of good stories
Oh,
too
he was
about
a
his life in Romania.
fascinating man.
He asked me to help him write a biography
I remember
one time.
that.
We didn't get very far before I pointed out, I was like, wait, this is going to take a heck of a lot more time than I
yeah.
have to be able to commit to such a thing. I hope that he still does that.
I
'cause
hope so, too.
Just in that either that one or maybe we had two meetings about it, he had some fascinating stories.
Yeah. So anyway, so he came to
I
America.
hope you're listening.
He started going by Johnny or Jan or John or Johnny or something like that. because that's the quote American version of the name Jan. Wasn't it his wife that was like, "Your name isn't Johnny. Your name is Jan"?
I do not remember if that was the case.
That's the way I remember it. That his wife is like, "What are you doing? Why did you change your name?" But so we knew him as Jan.
But yeah, I'm hesitant to say that that's the classic American story because it's quite possible that no, that's the classic story. Period. That some people have changed their names or changed the pronunciation of their names because it's easier to just go with the flow than to correct everybody out there.
Right, but like, there's all those names that like, what's the one? Diego is the same as the name James.
Yeah, I'd be lying if I said I understood that.
I don't know why names change when they change languages. It's never made sense to me.
I do not know either. I've not spent an extensive part of my time or any of my time, I think, studying such a thing. If I remember correctly, I first encountered that kind of scenario when, in one particular conversation, I heard the same guy I knew his name was James, but his I believe Mexican grandpa always called him Santiago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I didn't get that. I'm like, okay, I understand. Like in my brain, I was like, okay, so Santiago is like a nickname then or something.
No.
How is that the translation for James?
Iago is. Santiago is Saint James.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so Iago and James, it's the same name, but it's not the same name. So I declare that the American version of Scipio Africanus is Scipio. So we're okay to say Scipio.
I am going to call him Scipio until somebody can convince me, not suggest, but convince me to do so otherwise.
Yep.
And I'm sure I've done this on this podcast and will probably do this in my life on more than a couple of occasions where I may pronounce the same person's name differently in multiple different occasions, just because if I know of more than the one pronunciation of it, sometimes it's in my brain. I'll bounce around from one to the other.
Yeah. What I think is tragic is Catherine of Aragon. Her name is Catalina, I think. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But in Spain, her name was Catalina. We know her as Catherine only because she came to England. That's stupid. Her name is Catalina. Why don't we call her Catalina of Aragon?
That sounds like that's something they did to make it easier for the English subjects.
Exactly. Especially since there's 3 Catherines that married Henry. Let's differentiate them by calling her Catalina.
I'd propose 2 things to that. One might have been that, yes, it would have been easier for the English subjects.
It's the English version.
It would have been easier for the English subjects, and the other one would be to erase the Spanish part of it, so that the English people wouldn't think that their queen is Spanish. They would think that their queen is English.
I get it back then, but today I'm like, well, let's go back to her actual name. Whatever. That's fine.
We tend to stick with the names that are written in the history books.
I know.
I'd say this
it's written Scipio with a SCI.
I'd say this is like the same hill as trying to correct the people that were celebrating the new millennium in the year 2000. No, the millennium began in the year 2001. But no, you were not gonna no matter the size of the horse you wanted to go up and climb upon, you were not gonna convince the people that 2000 was not the end of the millennium.
Right, stuck in our brain.
Or the beginning of the new millennium.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into our regular topic today. Honey, I have a history question for you.
I love history questions.
How much iron did they need to create the Iron Curtain? And how heavy was it? Also, since it was like, they call it a curtain, not a wall, that implies that it could be moved and opened. So I'm imagining more of like a bead curtain situation.
Beads?
So, no, just like, no, I'm saying like individual strips of iron. So you could, because it's a curtain, you can open it. So you need like strips of iron. Or maybe like an accordion fold.
You sure you don't want to do this on video so people can see my facial reactions?
Maybe one day.
No, the Iron Curtain was not made up of iron, nor was it a curtain like one might see made up of beads in somebody's home as like the mock door wall thing. If I remember correctly, Iron Curtain, the name if I remember correctly, actually comes from one guy who was just providing a what's the word I'm looking for? A metaphor, if you will, for what the Soviet bloc was like.
Oh.
I don't, to the best of my knowledge, it was never any like officially adopted thing. It was this guy called it that in one speech comment. I don't remember what the context was, and that's the one that stuck.
Because it got repeated in history books.
Yeah.
Okay, but for real though, this is something that I don't understand because, like, honestly, as a child, you hear the Iron Curtain, the Soviet bloc, and I'm not sure I ever understood that those were the same thing. But still, I cannot think about this without imagining, like, the Berlin Wall. I think the Berlin Wall is the Iron Curtain, and it was a physical barrier. I don't understand this at all.
Okay. So, before we go any further, I must give a shout out to my fellow gamers.
Okay.
The Iron Curtain is a special feature, often for the Russian player, in, amongst other games, the Command & Conquer Red Alert series.
Yeah.
Using the Iron Curtain makes your vehicles indestructible for a temporary period of time.
Okay.
It's awesome.
That's really special.
It's not one of my favorite superpowers, but it's cool.
Okay.
All right, so the real Iron
Reality.
Curtain. All right. So, this is, like a lot of things, this is one of those things that's going to be a little bit of a longer story. So,
Uh-oh.
during World War II,
Got it.
Germany invades Russia because Germany wants Russia's land, particularly
Got
Russia's
it.
oil resources.
And did they do it in winter?
They did not invade in the winter, but they didn't succeed in their goals before winter came on.
Okay.
Do not
I know.
ask the question. Save that for some other day. Let's stick with the
question?
Iron Curtain question. Do
I
not
just
ask me
know.
about Russian super weapons. Stop it. I can see it on your face.
Nope,
Stop it.
nope.
Stop it.
I'm
Stop
just
it.
going to say.
Iron Curtain. Nope. Iron Curtain.
I'm
so,
just gonna say,
Germany
I
gets
know you
kicked
should
out
never-
of Russia. The Russians are beating them out. Eventually, the Russians knock every last German out of their territory.
Okay.
And now, conceivably, they got two options. They could stop there, invasion's over, and let Germany be the Allies' problem, or they can keep going.
Hold on.
You can understand why they would keep going,
Sorry.
because they want to crush their enemies. Okay.
Sorry, I'm really, really dense. Okay. Axis and Allies, World War II.
Yes.
Russia was on our side.
No. Yeah. No.
Russia
Russia was the case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Okay, but they are part of the Ally powers.
No. So,
Oh my
okay, there you go.
gosh.
I'm gonna have to say it depends on it depends on how you want to look at it.
What about in the board game?
Let me finish. On the board game, yes. So, Russia, like I said earlier, it's an enemy of my enemy is my
Yes.
friend scenario. Russia was fighting the Nazis just like the Allies were fighting the Nazis.
Got it.
So
Common
one
enemy.
has the argument that yes, they were then allies, but they did not work together. They did
Okay.
not coordinate together.
Okay.
In many cases, the most that ever happened between the two is that they would occasionally get together and agree upon, after the war's over, we're going to do this. After the war's over, we're going to do that.
Okay.
But there was never, at least not that I can recall, a time where the three leaders got together. And by the three leaders, I mean Britain, why am I
don't
forgetting
know.
Churchill's name? That where Churchill and Stalin and Roosevelt got together to discuss strategy during the war,
Okay.
of the fighting of the war, of the prosecution of the war, rather than what to
Okay,
do after
that
the war is
helps.
over. I know that the Russians got an awful lot of donations as far as money and supplies from the Allies, but to the best of my knowledge, Russia never reciprocated. Like, no Russian soldiers
Oh.
ever went to go help fight in the Pacific theater, not until the war was over. No Russian soldiers went to Britain or to France to
Yeah.
help in the liberation of theirs. They were all concentrated on their side. And in many cases, there were disagreements, vehement disagreements
Right.
between them, particularly between Churchill and Stalin, in arguments over what to do, which was actually getting to the Iron Curtain.
Okay. So Russia, it was like a one-sided friendship.
That would be fair to
Okay,
say.
I know what that's like. Okay, so Russia kicks out Germany, and then they got to decide what to do. They're not going to automatically like start helping the other ally powers because they're not friends with the ally powers.
No, so this is what
Okay.
happens. So Russia decides what I think most of us would decide. Yeah, you got to do. All right, the Germans invaded you. Well,
Yeah.
you're gonna until the Germans surrender to you.
Yeah.
You're gonna go beat them, and that means driving all the way as deep into their
Yeah.
territory as you need to get the surrender out of them.
Okay.
So Stalin actually has a second goal here, though, that he's able to get away with, and this is one of the things that made the Allies a little bit unhappy because he
Okay.
knew the Allies aren't going to be on board with this. But what are they going to do to stop me? I mean, they are gonna believe that Germany and Italy are the greater threat, not me, who's at least on their side.
So what can I get away with?
So Stalin envisions that what he wants is what will be called an Iron Curtain. Basically, Stalin wants a buffer zone so that in the inevitable event, because Stalin and a lot of the other Russians are convinced of this,
Okay.
in the inevitable event that Germany or somebody else from the West tries to invade Russia again, he wants there to be buffer states in between so that the enemy troops don't actually get to Russian territory, or even if by some miracles they do, they don't get as deep into Russian territory as the Nazis were.
Okay.
Not everybody knows this, but the Nazis got all the way to Moscow. There was fighting on the outskirts of the city
Dang.
before the Germans were beaten back. So that is among Stalin's goals. He wants that buffer zone, and he also wants farming ground, if you will, for
Yeah.
communism. He wants communism to become more popular and to spread.
Okay.
The idea there again being that communist countries are loyal to Russia, the founder, they're the birthplace of communism.
Okay.
Not to say that Russia actually was the birthplace of it, but that was the place where it first came into practice. I'm using air quotes, came into practice. That's a
Okay.
conversation for a different time. The difference between what Stalin did and what
Okay.
communism is supposed to be and what socialism is supposed to be.
Okay, sounds complicated.
So anyway, yes. So that is what the Iron Curtain was. That was the buffer zone that Stalin created by once he pushed Germany out of Eastern Europe and all the way
Yeah.
back into Germany. He did not just up and let most of those nations go. He did not restore
Wait,
them.
so
let
there's
me finish.
countries here. I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand.
So, in between Germany
Yeah.
and Russia, prior to World War II beginning, there
Yeah.
are lots of countries. Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Serbia, Bosnia. Oh, actually, no, I don't think Bosnia existed. Sorry. Bulgaria, Romania. There are probably some others too, but those are the only ones that are coming to my head. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania.
Okay.
All of these countries are in between Germany in between Germany, Italy, and Russia.
Got it.
And Greece. Greece was another one. And you could argue that Turkey was another one too, but less of a concern. At least to the best of my knowledge, it was less of a concern. So Stalin wanted all of these to be basically Soviet puppet states,
Okay.
so that he was still running the show in all of them
Yeah.
under the guise of them appearing to be independent communist nations. And so this
Okay.
way he got the buffer zone that he wanted. If anybody was going to try to invade Russia, well, they'd have to go through these buffer states
Yeah.
first. And he gets his right breeding down for communism. He knows that these are places where communism is going to flourish. Many of them, albeit they only flourished because the Soviet Union had to lend money and troops to those countries, or to the communist governments in those countries,
Yeah.
to make sure. If I remember correctly, there were different communist parties too in a couple of them, and Stalin had to choose which ones to back, so it even got that bad. But yes,
Huh.
that is what the Iron Curtain was. It was that defensive zone.
Okay.
I believe another reference that is occasionally made, or that the Iron Curtain occasionally is referred to, is also the curtain of secrecy. That there was an that it was also an espionage wall, that it was hard to break through to see what was going on the other side.
but not a physical wall.
But yes, if that one is the case, the espionage one, then I haven't heard too many sources for that. To the best of my memory, when we talk about the Iron Curtain, what was being referenced, at least by the guy who said it, and by most people thereafter, was that communist-friendly buffer zone in between Germany and Russia. And so Stalin didn't get all the countries he wanted,
Yeah.
but he got a decent amount. So Poland was granted its independence. Stalin did not want that. Stalin wanted Poland. We know that beyond a shadow of a doubt. There were a lot of among the crimes. I'm using air quotes again, because Stalin, of course, denied this, but the Poles never believed him about it. So for much of the war, Poland is under the control of the Germans. There are Polish people that are fighting to get rid of the Germans. Of course, there's a resistance effort. Some of those resistance efforts are communist people who favor Poland going communist after the war is over, when Poland gets itself back. But because Stalin believed that the vast majority of the people, or at least of the, I don't remember what they were called. I think they were called the Home Army or the Home Front. That was the name of the biggest resistance group in Poland. Technically, I guess I shouldn't even call it a resistance group, because the Polish government denies that they ever surrendered. They maintain that they never surrendered, so the Polish government was still in existence at the time. Anyway, Stalin believed that the most of the resistance fighters in Poland were pro-democrat, not pro-communist. So he purposefully delayed invading Poland because he figured that, let the Nazis and the Poles kill more of each other. That way, the ground will be even more riper for communism afterwards. So not only did he not go in to help the partisans fight the Germans, he didn't loan them supplies or anything to that nature.
Nothing.
Didn't give them guns or anything to that. No. Because, his goal was not to get rid of the German, or his primary goal was not to get rid of the Germans or to help the Germans be overthrown. His primary goal, because he saw which way the wind was blowing, he knew by this point that, all right, the Germans, they're not winning this war. It's just a matter of how long.
Right.
And he was in no hurry to get it over with, because he had other things that he needed to do while the Allies still had Germany as a distraction. Going too quickly, he loses his distraction, and then there's more problems.
Right.
So I remember amongst the things that were debated in the arguments that were happening, there was a fair amount of give and take. There's a document called or referred to as the Naughty document that Churchill makes in secret with Stalin. He does not tell Roosevelt, because he knows that Roosevelt and the Americans, they are not going to approve of this.
Okay.
Because it's an old style it's old style diplomacy for after war, old style conquest. The idea that the conquerors get more land, they get to take things. So, if I remember correctly, among the conditions, Greece would maintain its independence, would be under Britain influence. Russia wasn't allowed to influence it.
Yeah.
Russia would get Bulgaria and Romania. Russia wanted Yugoslavia, but it would not get that. I believe Britain got Yugoslavia, or at least got the majority of control and influence in Yugoslavia. I think the Soviet Union was going to get Czechoslovakia as well, and I don't remember what some of the other... I believe the Soviet Union was getting Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania as well. I think Poland and Greece were the only ones that avoided, or at least in large scale, avoided Russian interference.
And you're calling this the Soviet Union. So is it Russia or is it the USSR?
So technically both. I'd say the better thing to call it would be the Soviet Union, the United Soviet States Republic, the USSR. Okay. Russia is the cultural name of the land where it started from. That's where Moscow is. That's where the Russian people are. But technically, you could say that it wasn't Russia. They didn't call themselves Russia, or at least not on official documents. The people called themselves Russians, probably. Or actually, you know what? I'd have to say I don't even know if that's true. I have not gotten a hold of or read too many documents that were written, or too many testimonies of people that lived in the Soviet Union making comments about whether they identify themselves as Russians or as Soviets or what the case might be. Yeah. The official name was the United Soviet States Republic. So we tend to call that the Soviet Union. Right. At the same time, though, people also called it Russia, because there was no denying that most of the rest of the world throughout history called that same piece of land Russia.
Well, wasn't it
so
just
it's kind of
like Russia took all these countries, right?
So technically, no.
Okay.
So let me make sure that I'm saying. So Russia had a whole buttload of land before World War II begins.
Got it.
The Soviet Union, the borders are the same. When the Russian Empire disappears and the United Soviet States Republic appears, there isn't a change in land. Well, the only change in land is because of land that Russia, or rather the USSR, surrendered to Germany at the end of the First War. But Russia gets all of that back when the First World War ends. As part of the Treaty of Versailles, they get all their land back. despite the fact that most of the world did not like and didn't become friends with the Soviet Union. But that's a whole nother subject in there as well.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of like the names that we were talking about earlier. It's going to depend on who you ask.
Got it.
Most people recognize that Russia and the Soviet Union and the Russian people and the Soviets were the same group of people, the same geographic area, the same geographic peoples.
Yeah.
But it's an argument over how they would identify themselves. So think about it like this. Let's say that, take the American Civil War, let's say that the Confederacy succeeded and won its independence.
Okay.
Would they still call themselves Americans, or would they now call themselves Confederates? Technically, both are true.
So if you were to talk to people at the time living in Yugoslavia, the Czech Republic, or Czechoslovakia, whatever those countries are that you named, Latvia, they wouldn't have called themselves Russians.
They would not have, because they were still ostensibly independent nations. They were still their own people.
They're independent, but they weren't, because Russia had some on them.
They were puppets, yeah.
Okay.
Or they had puppet governments. And over the course of the next couple of years, in between the end of World War II and the fall of the Soviet Union in '89, there's lots of rebellions, protests, resistances in many of these countries against the communist, or at least against the pro-Russian governments in those areas.
Yeah.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I want to say there was at least one country that had a revolution. The revolutionaries were still communist, but they weren't pro-Russian communist.
Oh.
So Stalin, or he might have been dead, so whoever was in charge of the Soviet Union at that time, still sent in military support to crush the communist rebels, because they weren't pro-Soviet Union communist.
Okay. So communist isn't necessarily synonymous with Russia at the time.
No. So, this is, and this misunderstanding is something that actually is one of the big causes or big influences as that starts World War II off in the beginning.
Okay.
All right, so this is a common misconception. The Nazis were not true fascists. They identified themselves as National Socialists. Socialists being the key word. There were very, very many ways in which the National Socialists were much more like the Soviet Union in a lot of their philosophies, a lot of their practices. The only major difference, at least from my perspective, the only major difference when I look at them is that National Socialism puts the nation first, the betterment of the nation. Okay. This is why you got a lot, and this is why the Nazis were very proud of their German heritage, the German spirit, Germany being the master race and all that. In their mindset, Germany is the most important thing. But at the time, despite the fact that the government systems were similar, because they were both socialist, communism was viewed as obedience or loyalty to Russia. So not to socialism, to Russia. So that's why the National Socialists hated communism. Even though it was very similar in practice, communism was viewed as not loyal to Germany. It was viewed as loyal to Russia.
So loyal to
Germany. That is not national.
But it's loyal to Germany versus loyal to Russia. It's the same thing, just a different country.
It's the same government practices, but where do your loyalties lie?
Okay.
Think about it like this. The United States. We are not the only. We are not the only republic in the world. There are lots of other republics, but do our people? Are we loyal to our republic, or are we loyal to? Are we loyal to the republic that Britain practices? Now, before anybody listening says this, yes, I know that Britain nominally calls itself a constitutional monarchy, and they can keep calling themselves that until the day they die. That I am not going to tell them that they can't call themselves anymore. But in practice, they are in every way, shape, and form a republic. The only way in which they hold on to this, in my opinion, ridiculous idea that they are still a constitutional monarchy is that the prime minister, once elected by the people, actually, I should say that's not fair. I don't know if the prime minister is elected by their people or if he's elected by the members of parliament.
No, wait, I don't know. Never mind. Go on.
The only way in which they maintain this nominal constitutional monarchy is that the queen's powers are, or the king now, so the royals' powers are very, very limited in the Constitution. Among those things in the Constitution is that there's going to be a prime minister who ostensibly is in charge of the country, but he must, or he or she, upon being elected prime minister, then has their ceremonial meeting with the king or the queen in which they basically ask permission and say, Your Majesty, the people have asked me to form a government in your name.
Yeah.
Do I have your permission? And the king or queen really doesn't have a choice.
He's not going to say no.
Yeah, I mean, even if he did say no, I don't think anything would come from it. So the king or queen has to say yes, and thus the country continues to be run like a republic, not like a monarchy.
Right. From my knowledge, which could be very flawed, it seems to me like the monarchy is just a symbol and a glorified diplomat.
Oh.
Diplomat corps.
And actually, I'm going to take one step further on that, the idea of the loyalty thing. All right, so...
Yeah. Hold on, are we going back to socialism?
No, I'm going to go back to the United States real quick.
Okay, yes, you went on a huge tangent, and I forgot how we got there.
This happens. This is the problem of asking me questions when I'm not
so
allowed to script them.
So America likes republics.
All right, so America is in practice a republic.
Yes.
In every way, shape, and form, we are a republic.
Yes.
But there's this huge misconception that you will see, I kid you not, you are going to see this in every political speech or argument, whatever the case is.
Yep.
I know the Democratic Party loves to use this word. I'm hesitant to think of how many times I've heard libertarians or Republicans or Green Party or any of the others use the word, but they will constantly use the word democracy in whatever they're trying to say.
Yep.
The United States is not a democracy. The United States never was a democracy. The Founding Fathers never intended for the United States to be a democracy.
And
the Founding Fathers, like other people, realized that democracy is terrible. The Founding Fathers' goal was to come up with a government system that avoided tyranny at all costs, or at least as much as it possibly could.
Yeah.
And the Founding Fathers knew that democracy does not get rid of tyranny.
Yeah.
50% plus one people can exercise tyranny over the 49.9999, whatever you want to
it's
call
your wolf
people.
and the sheep analogy.
Yeah, it's the two wolf and the sheep, or in this case, let's say the 51 wolves and the 49 sheep deciding what for dinner. Founding Fathers never want us to be democracy because they recognize democracy has flaws. But you have people, and it seems to me like many things in the United States, it switches based on who's ever in power, Republicans or Democrats. Often enough, people will, one group or the other will say that, oh, we want democracy. We don't like what we have here. We should be practicing actual democracy. And the other one will be saying, no, that's ridiculous. We're a republic. And then it goes back and forth, vice versa. Because whoever the 50 plus one is, well, they want democracy. They don't want this constitutional republic, which means they have to respect the laws of the other 49.
See, I don't think they actually want democracy, though. I think this is an example of why we can't have democracy, because I'm not sure if I'm going to explain this right, but the politicians throw democracy around like it's a good thing, like, yes, we're democratic and I believe in you people because democracy good and you people are smart. They use that word because they know the majority are too stupid to understand what they're saying.
All right.
They don't actually want democracy. They want us to think that they trust the majority. They don't trust the majority.
And before we go on calling our lovely listeners stupid people...
No, our listeners are the smart half.
Going back, the only reason that we brought this up was to explain how there's differences between pro-Russia socialism, pro-Germany socialism, pro-Yugoslavian, Croatian, Czechoslovakian, or Czech Republican, Slovakian, Chinese. Every country that has practiced communism in some way, shape, or form did it ever so slightly differently.
Of course.
Mostly trying to copy either off the Russian model or the Chinese model, but all of them ending up very differently.
Okay.
So, unless I'm mistaken, I hope that you were happy with the answer, and we can talk about this more. The Iron Curtain was that buffer zone. All the nation states in between Germany and Italy and Russia to protect Russia from future invasion and to allow breeding grounds for communism to spread.
Okay. So it was just land that Russia had its thumb on and could, like, I mean, they're kind of the cannon fodder, like, to keep between itself.
Kind of one of the
Okay.
reasons why one could have called it the Iron Dome. You could beat
Dome.
upon.
Don't give me new
Sorry, not the Iron Dome.
analogies.
Sorry, not the Iron Dome. I said that wrong. Sorry, the Iron Curtain. The idea that if the West ever did decide to invade, we're going to be hitting that wall, and we're never actually going to get into Russia where the base is.
Yeah. But were those countries? Sorry, explain this again. Were those countries willing to be that buffer zone? They knew they were in the line of fire if something were to happen.
Well, that's not a fair question because remember, these countries are populated by millions and millions of people.
Okay.
Some of them were pro-Russia, pro-Soviet Union.
Because they're communist, loyal to Russian communism.
That's one way. It could have also just been that some of them were benefiting off of kickbacks or the benefits of Stalin or the Soviet Union putting them in power. So there's lots of different reasons why one might be happy with the Soviet Union being in charge.
Yeah.
The most moral of which would be, you agree with the Soviet Union ideology, government system, whatnot.
Yeah.
The least of which being that, you're just getting money or benefits some way, somehow that you enjoy from them. At the same time, certainly there were people in those countries also that did not like it, that wanted the communists, the USSR, or even just the USSR's influence out, and still wanted communism in those places. It's like today. We have a communist party in the United States. They're not as big as influential, but they're here. So we have some people that aren't happy that we have our government system here.
Right.
There were some people that are. Same thing with those countries in the middle. There were some that were happy with the Soviet Union. There were some that weren't. There were some that wanted more assistance from the Allies, some that didn't.
Okay.
So a good example, part of the Iron Curtain would have been East Germany at the time.
Okay, hold up. I'm going to stop you right there because I think I can predict where you're going, and I have more questions
Okay.
that involve where I think you're going with it.
Okay.
But I don't want to do another long episode.
Okay.
It was like 50 minutes last time, and I did want to keep it to half an hour.
And how much did we stay on topic of the Iron Curtain before we descended into mockery of British and American politics?
That was a big tangent. So we're gonna do our
But
first.
it's all connected. Remember, I
No,
said
I
I'm
know
a macro
this.
historian.
I know.
It's all connected.
Okay, so we're gonna do our first ever two-parter. Okay,
Two-parter.
This isn't going to be a one day I'll ask you more about that. No, I want to know about that now. So we're gonna close here, and we're gonna record another episode right now.
So let me get this straight. I'm going to answer your question right now, but you're going to make anybody
They
listening
have to wait
wait another week.
They have to wait a week.
People like you ruined my childhood. Do you have any idea? No, of course
be
you do.
continued.
You remember how much I hated it when they said same bat time, same bat channel? Oh, that was torture.
I'm sorry.
Are you?
Well, no. It'll encourage them to subscribe so they don't miss it. That's just good marketing.
I miss Batman.
I'm sorry. All right, so we're ending there. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review. Come on, no pouting. No pouting.
I like Batman. I miss Batman. Pow! Whack.
Does Batman have anything to do with the Iron Curtain? Oh, okay. Think about it for next
It's
episode.
been a while, but there might have been a communist episode or two.
Probably.
There's probably
the
some big
script.
communist bad guy in one of the episodes that I'm forgetting about now.
Probably.
It's been a while.
Read the script.
If you'd like to hear a future episode about Batman, a future episode with more information about today's topic, apparently you're going to have to wait another week.
Yep.
Or you could contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or Tickety Talk at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Don't ask me questions about Russian superweapons. Just be sure to specify in your message if it's silly or serious, because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge as a joke.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye. So, I figured out how we can get revenge on Ryan
Did we need revenge on Ryan?
for putting those alarms on our Alexa
Okay.
that bothered us at midnight, and then it was going to go off again at 1 o'clock.
Yep.
So it's going to unfortunately be a long plan because of that burglar alarm they have on that property, or that tells them when somebody's coming.
Yeah.
So this is what's going to have to happen. I'm going to have to go over to their house some point while Ryan is not at their house or is out of the way so that he could possibly suspect. I'm going to have to find a hiding place around their house somewhere, and then at midnight, I'm going to sneak out of my hiding place, go bang on his window, and then get back in my hiding place. Actually, I suppose at that point, I don't have to go back in my hiding place. It'll be enough to have freaked him out, and then I can spend the rest of the night inside where it's probably going to be nicer and warmer than my hiding place.
That sounds like a lot of work.
It is, which is why I'm hoping that you'll do it instead of me.
Yeah, that's not happening.
And we're recording already.
Always.
Always? Really? Always recording?
Always.
So when I'm singing in the bathroom, you're recording?
Yep. If I had room on my hard drive, I probably would.
That's disturbing. I don't think anybody wants to listen to me sing in the bathroom.
I do. I like it when you sing.
Really? How come you never said anything before now?
What are you freaking talking about?
I don't remember you ever telling me to keep singing while I was in the bathroom.
Not bathroom specifically.
Oh, okay.
But I like to hear you sing.
Oh, okay. I got you.